How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? This is Jeff with Let's Talk iOS, episode number 3. I have my co-host Sebastian Page and Cody Lee on the line. What's up, guys? How you doing?
What's up, Jeff?
Not a lot. It's a little later than normal.
It's a little later than normal.
Yeah.
But everyone's awake, right?
Yeah, barely. I can't have caffeine.
I mean, it's only 4:30 here.
Yeah, it's 2:30 here, but I haven't been able to have coffee in a couple of days. I've been sick to my stomach for the last few days. So no caffeine for me, and I can feel it. Like an hour ago, I was like barely making it upstairs. I was like, oh, maybe I need to take a nap here. But I think getting together, talking about awesome, cool new stuff is going to revive me.
Do you get headaches when you go without caffeine for that long?
No. I just get a little tired.
Yeah, you're lucky. I get headaches after a couple of days.
You're addicted. You're an addict.
Hi, my name's Cody, and I'm an addict.
So we have a bunch of things to talk about today, guys. I think the main topic of conversation, of course, is going to be the iPad mini.
With Retina display.
Did we all get an iPad mini this weekend or last week?
Yes, we did. I did, at least.
I did.
Yes.
Jeff?
And did as well.
Okay, the way Apple let the iPad mini with Retina display in the wild was just as weird as the way Apple introduced the iPad mini with Retina display last month. Wasn't it?
Yeah, because I think we've talked about this on a previous show, but the way that Apple introduced the mini on stage at its iPad event was really weird, right? They talked about the Air for most, I would say 15 or 20 minutes, and then they brought up the iPad mini with Retina display and said, oh, by the way, here's this. It's going to be, it's got the Retina display. It's going to be available sometime in November kind of deal, right? And that's why we thought that was kind of weird, because we thought the mini was like this huge product for them, and we thought that adding a Retina display was a big deal, and they just didn't treat it like that, did they?
No, they didn't at all. It was just like a side product, basically. It was just, hey, by the way, we have the iPad mini with Retina display coming out, and it's going to come out later in November. Thank you, bye-bye. That was just very unusual, very strange. But we didn't, that was strange, and then you kind of forget about it. And then when was that? Was that Thursday night?
Tuesday. Last Tuesday.
Last Tuesday.
Monday night, I guess, is when it all kind of started happening.
Monday night, rumors started, Monday morning, rumors started happening, coming out saying that Apple was going to launch the iPad mini with Retina display the following day, everywhere in several countries, including the US, of course. And that just was very unusual for Apple to release a product not on a Friday, because usually the iPhone and the iPad come out on Friday. But it was just also weird that they would do it without letting anyone know. And that's basically what happened. They just, unleashed the iPad mini with Retina display without making a big deal out of it.
And I've got a few notes here, because I was actually, for a while, I was planning to do a post about this. I just thought it was so strange. I think me and you kind of talked about this on Twitter. Actually, even in iMessage, right? Because we were talking about it the night of, wondering if it was going to happen.
Right.
But so what happened was, I think Mac Rumors was the first to get the scoop. They noted that on an internal system, a post came from Apple, originating from an internal Apple computer, basically said that the iPad mini with Retina display was going to launch on the 12th. And what's crazy is nobody knew about this. I mean, it seems like in the last, I can't remember the last time I was really surprised by an Apple announcement or product, just because there were so many leaks ahead of time. So either Apple guarded this secret well, or it was a really last minute kind of decision, because I remember watching Twitter that night, and some pretty big, what I would call high profile reporters completely denied this was going to happen, right? I remember Clayton Morris of Fox said for sure no iPad mini tomorrow. There was a couple others. I don't have their name right off the top of my head, but
John Gruber is not really a reporter, but he was kind of dismissing the claim too.
Yeah, well, there's a few people dismissing, but people like Clayton Morris just outright said, "I've talked to my sources," or they at least insinuated that they had talked to their sources, and there was no, Best Buy reps, cellular people in the wireless industry, that work for some of the carriers. Nobody had any idea about this, and then what happened? Right, the Apple Store went down and things started kind of spitballing from there. It was like, well, maybe this is going to happen. And as the night kind of went on, everybody just kind of held visual to apple.com. And when they, the site came back up, they had Retina mini displays on sale, available for shipping. I believe it was 1 to 3 days for the 16 and 32 gigabyte Wi-Fi models,
Yeah.
and 5 to 10 for everything else. And it was just so weird because you're wondering why would they do this? And I think it all boils down to, wasn't there a lot of reports ahead of time saying that the supply was going to be really limited?
Yeah, quite a few of them actually.
Yeah, so I think that had a lot to do with it. And speaking of John Gruber, he linked to a really smart post. I thought, I don't have his name right in front of me, but I took some points from that post that basically said that there was a few reasons why this was a really smart move on Apple's part. The first one was that Apple's biggest fans, basically the people who are really looking forward to this tablet, got access to it first. Because if you didn't follow the tech world, if you weren't on Twitter that night, you didn't know this was happening. Apple made no other kind of formal announcement. So basically, Apple fans got to it first. Gray market, I thought this was a big point. The gray market that typically lines up for big product launches like this, because this was supposed to do really well in the gray market. This kind of put a dent in their business as well. People who buy iPads and then resell them overseas for higher prices. And then finally, it kind of thwarted, people rushing to stores, because at first Apple said it was going to release this thing later in November. Well, some people started going, are they really going to try to do this on Black Friday with limited inventory? Well, no, because then you have people lining up at stores and hundreds of them getting turned away, disappointed because they're out of stock. That doesn't happen when Apple releases this quietly midnight, 2 weeks ahead of time.
Yeah, I'm not sure I really buy these excuses or these reasons for Apple doing this. I do.
What would be the reason?
I'm not sure. I don't think like the black market thing. Apple doesn't really care about that because they're still selling. They're still selling iPads no matter what, no matter where it goes. You can buy the iPad in the US and send it back to China. Apple still sells an iPad. Then what was the other reasons? I mean, to satisfy the fans, like the real fans. I'm like, not really, because it was everywhere online by the end of the day on Monday. So even if you're not like a big fan, if you've been like online, you've seen it and you know that the next day you might be able to get an iPad mini or at least reserve one, which was really what happened. You could order one online. What I really believe is that, one, yes, they have less supply for the iPad mini. And two, I believe the iPad mini is not as big of a product, as big of a deal for Apple as we think it is. That's really what I think that's what it comes down to. Apple, it's not a big deal. They make less money on each iPad mini. They'd rather sell an iPad Air where they make more money on it. So that would explain why they made a small deal out of the iPad mini with Retina display during the iPad event last month.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Sebastian, because when you look online, you go to apple.com, store.apple.com, the shipping times have not changed at all.
I noticed that. I've noticed that.
So there's plenty. I don't think the whole thing about the stock or the amount, true that it may not be as plentiful as the iPad Air, but obviously there's still plenty of stock here. There's still 1 to 3 business days shipping for the 16 gigabyte and 32 gigabyte Wi-Fi only models, and 5 to 10 for the rest.
I just believe they want to downplay the iPad mini, not downplay it, but not make a big deal out of it.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I thought in the beginning, because like you said, the margins for the iPad Air are just so much better than the mini.
Even though the margins might have increased a little bit this year with They increased the price a little bit by $60, $70. So that might have changed a little bit, but this price increase might have gone in the better screen as well. So we never know. And I mean, I guess we'll figure it out soon enough when someone picks it apart and try to figure out the cost of everything in there.
Yeah, those are good points for sure.
Nonetheless, it was very weird.
It was weird.
It was very out of place. It was very unusual. Took everyone by surprise. But I mean, in the end, we all got an iPad mini last week. I remember, so I stayed up and I told Cody last Monday night, I was like, hey dude, I'm going to bed, I'm tired. Can you please wake me up if that actually happens? And I remember at 11:58, I just woke up and I opened my eyes and I looked at the time. It was 11:58. I went downstairs, launched my Mac, and Cody called me like 2 minutes later saying, hey, it's live, it's live, man, go get it. And so I placed my order, went back to bed right away, and it was supposed to be delivered. I think it was supposed to be delivered tomorrow. I believe the date was the 19th.
19th.
Yeah,
yes,
that was the 19th. Fine. I was like, wow, that's a long time to wait. But then 2 days after that, we found out that the iPad mini was actually in a few stores, in a few select stores across the United States and other countries, actually. So it seems like it started hitting the East Coast first, and then by the end of the day, I think it was on Wednesday or Thursday, by the end of the day, it was at my local store here in Carlsbad near San Diego. So I just placed my order for pickup online, and a couple hours later, I had an email saying my order was ready. So I walked in the store and walked away with an iPad mini with Retina display 2 minutes later. So that was fairly painless, really. That was probably one of the best experience I've had buying an iPad or an iPhone in the last few years. It was very simple. But again, it was just very weird that it was in store, but that wasn't very clear what was going to be in store. It wasn't clear what store would have it or not.
That's what I thought was weird, was that we talked about this, Sebastian. Mm-hmm. There was no pattern. I mean, when these things started showing up in stores, it was the Wi-Fi model only at first, and it was a few stores here and there on the East Coast. And then I think we went through and we checked a bunch of stores, and it started popping up, in the Midwest. And then, Sebastian, you had said that it was available in some Los Angeles stores.
Yeah, some like random Los Angeles stores in the ghetto would have like a few units, while the major stores didn't. Stores in San Francisco, which could be considered really as the flagship stores, didn't have any inventory. That was just plain weird.
Yeah, because usually Apple rolls out. I mean, it's legendary with its ability to launch a product in its stores all simultaneously, and it didn't happen. So it just kind of added to the weirdness, I think.
Yeah, but
So you walked in. So did you cancel your online order?
Yeah, well, I couldn't cancel my online order because my order I already been shipped at the time I got my iPad mini in store. So I received it on Friday, actually. The one I had ordered online, I received it on Friday, and I opened the box, and I opened the package. I didn't even open the box of the mini. I just went to the Apple store and returned it right away. And the day before, I had returned my iPad Air because I had the mini, so I didn't need the iPad Air anymore. Guys over there were like, oh, I saw you yesterday. Didn't you return something? I'm like, yeah, I returned the Air. Today I'm returning the mini. I already have the mini. I picked it up 2 days ago, blah, blah, blah. So,
I have a problem. Don't bother me. I have a problem.
Yeah.
So because it wasn't available in my local store, I had to wait until till mine shipped and actually got here. And it didn't get here till late Friday night. I was kind of disappointed. I was 2 or 3 days behind everybody else. It didn't show up in our actual stores here in Dallas until the weekend, so I thought that was pretty weird. But at least I got it. How did your experience go, Jeff?
That pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah. Tell us
it's
a
funny story.
Tell us a story. It sounds like a road trip.
Yeah, something like that. I guess I woke up probably around the same time you did, Sebastian, Tuesday night. Was it Tuesday night when it launched?
Tuesday morning.
Tuesday
early
morning.
for
Yeah,
you,
Monday
probably,
night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I woke up at around midnight. I placed my order. I was really disappointed because there were no cellular models available. 1 to 3 business days. It was like 5 to 10 for the cellular. So I went ahead and ordered a Wi-Fi only model. And then I waited a few days, and lo and behold, it was local to me, somewhat local, 2 hours away, and a store 2 hours away. So I canceled my online order and I drove 2 hours to get my 32 gig Retina iPad mini with cellular capability. I got to the store after driving 2 hours, and they told me that their point of sale system was completely down. So I'm in the store. I'm like, guys, I just drove 2 hours away. How long do you think this is going to take? And he said he doesn't know. We just have to wait. Can you go? He asked me if I had eaten yet. He said, go get something to eat and then come back and maybe it'll work. So 2 hours later, I come back and still no life in their point of sale. So all these customers are just standing in there, trying to check out, but they can't check out.
Well, it went down across the U.S., didn't it?
Yeah, it's completely.
Didn't we find that out later that it went down for? Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible. So
I can't imagine what that did for their business.
oh
yeah.
man, that had to be just a major hit. But they started pulling out like carbon paper and like those swipers that you saw like at department stores back in the 80s.
Like the machine that goes like slash slash.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good impression, Sebastian.
Thank
That
you.
was really good, actually. But yeah, so the only problem is that if you did personal pickup, you were just dead in the water. It didn't matter. You couldn't check out just with the slack thing at all. You just could not. They just could not check you out if you did personal pickup. So, needless to say, I drove 2 hours to get there and drove 2 hours back home and left empty-handed.
Wow. So
Oh, you
when
ended
did
up
you
leaving empty-handed.
Yeah, didn't get one.
Oh wow.
4 hours.
So wait, so you live in Kentucky, right?
Yes.
And you drove to where?
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. That's right. Because I remember you texting us that and being like, "Hey, is it weird that I'm going to Cincinnati to get a mini?" I thought it was further than 2 hours away. I was like, "Well, to each their own, I guess." I thought you were real happy with your air.
gotta do what you gotta do?
I guess
So the next day, I get up and I say, okay, well, I'm going to go try this again because I need this. It was getting to crunch time because it was like 1 day away before I had to return my iPad Air or I had to keep it. So I drove 2 more hours, got there, purchased the iPad mini, which was thankfully able to be purchased, traded in my iPad Air, and left a happy camper. So that is my, what is that, 8 hours driving total to get my iPad mini with Retina display.
Wow, that's dedication.
And you got a T-Mobile model, right?
Yes. See, I could have got cellular here locally. I mean, it was no problem. But I could have got just Wi-Fi only locally. But I just needed a cellular.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So, mind you, that's the same Jeff who last week told you that the iPad Air was the ultimate iPad, and that was his new iPad, and there was not going to be any other iPad, and he might not even check out the iPad mini at all. Right? That's the same. That's the same Jeff, right?
8 hours of driving later.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, is there like a medical term for this problem? I don't know.
I don't know. Recurringly. I don't know. I don't even know. Just take that out.
He goes, I can't even make up a good one.
No.
Okay. Well, I mean, we've all had our minis, right, for a couple of days now. What do you guys think? What are your first impressions after the first few days?
Love it.
I somewhat love it.
Oh my god.
No, I'm going to keep it for sure, especially after driving 8 hours and filling up.
I somewhat love it.
No, but seriously, like there is something to be said about a larger iPad. Like just using the iPad Air for that amount of time, I really do appreciate just having more real estate. There is definitely something to be said for that. With that being said, I do think the iPad mini is just an overall better device because of the portability.
Well, okay, let me speak to that real quick. You've had a mini before, right, Jeff? That was your before the Air. That was your
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think it's noticeably heavier than the first generation Mini?
I don't think so. The only reason I could say maybe is because I use a smart case now instead of a smart cover, so I haven't really handled the Air without the case too much.
Or
But with the
the
case
Mini?
on
Yeah.
there, it yeah, the Mini. With the case on there, it is definitely. I mean, obviously, you're going to notice a difference, but I don't think it's anything crazy.
Yeah, it is.
So
It is noticeable to take, to use the same word you used. It is noticeable. You can notice it, but it's not. Um, it's noticeable, but not in a bad way. It's not noticeable as in going from iPad 2 to iPad 3,
Yeah,
where it was
no, it's not. It's not that bad. No.
it was noticeable, but it was just like heavy. It was big and chunky, and I mean, I could tell it was slightly heavier than my older iPad Mini, but honestly, and I'm super picky about these things, and I'm kind of anal about these things, and I took both in my hands, and I was like, okay, the older iPad Mini is a little lighter, but definitely not a big deal at all. If that's a concern for anyone in the market for a Mini who previously owned a Mini and is concerned about that, I mean, that shouldn't be a concern at all. I mean, in
No,
my
it's
case anyway. What do you think, Cody? Because you seem to be more on top of that.
Yeah, and I had said something along those lines on Twitter. I said, wow, because judging by reviews, like the early hands-on reviews that people gave, maybe from their hands-on time at the event last month, or even people who got their hands on a Mini a little earlier, they said that it was not noticeable, that it was not noticeably heavier than the one previous. And the first time I picked it up and held my first generation Mini in my hand, I thought this is actually a pretty big difference. It's big enough for me to notice it. And I think that's where it stops, though, right? I think I followed up that tweet with saying, it may be more noticeable, but it's not a deal breaker. It's still a device that you can hold in one hand. I even said something I like to do if my hand starts getting fatigued holding my Mini, I hold it in landscape mode between my thumb and my index finger. And I just kind of
thumb and
hold it like that.
index or thumb
Thumb
and
and index.
pinky?
Nah, well, thumb and index, and then I have my other fingers kind of behind it forgotten. But I mean, it's hard to explain. I may tweet a picture of it later.
Yeah, do that.
Uh, but it's just like it's a way I hold it when the normal way gets fatiguing, and I can't do that with an iPad Air, like a full size iPad model, because it's obviously way too large. I don't have a 12-inch finger span between my thumb and my middle finger kind of deal. So, anyways, to say all that, the weight is noticeable, but it's not a deal breaker, and the thickness is kind of noticeable, I thought, but definitely again not a deal breaker.
Do you guys get any accessories?
No.
No,
No
no,
smart covers?
no.
I can't.
I'm not a case cover kind of guy.
Nah. Especially, I am sometimes on my iPhone just because it gets beat up and I don't want it to get beat up. But the iPad, it just, for the most part, it sits in my house and on the couch and on the coffee table. And I like it because it's so small and thin, and it's just tough to find anything that's not gonna. I mean, you have a case now, right? A smart case. What
Yeah.
do you think of that? Does that make it more,
Yes, it does. But
super bulky?
yeah, it does. But this is, I know some people like MG Siegler, he kind of dissed the case because of, I guess, the build quality with some of the flaps or the flap, especially with the iPad Air. But I think this is a really like well designed case, and it especially works good for the Mini. Like for the iPad Air, definitely not. I wouldn't go with a smart case. But for the Mini, something so compact, it reminds you of a little book with the case on there, and you don't have to worry about your back getting beat up and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
definitely think the black smart case with the black Mini looks good.
Well, you take yours kind of on the road, so to speak, with you a lot, right?
Oh,
It
yeah.
leaves the house with you a lot.
All
Okay,
the
see,
time. Yeah.
I think if I did that and used it on a daily basis outside of my house, I would have to figure out some way, obviously, to carry it.
Yeah, absolutely. You need a little protection if you use it outside the house. Do you do any? I know last week you were saying that you were doing quite a bit of work on your iPad Air, Jeff. Are you carrying this on with the iPad Mini?
Yeah, I do write a lot on the Mini, just using the keyboard, the soft keyboard. It's not as, going back to the whole real estate thing, it's not as easy to type
Of course,
that
yeah.
I find on the Mini, because I like to type in landscape mode. I don't thumb type or anything like that.
Okay.
So I do find it a little more difficult to type with, but I still am pretty productive in like Byword and stuff like that. I use that a lot.
Okay, that's good to know. And you're probably going to get very much used to it as you do more and more of it. So it's probably going to become easier as you do
Yes.
more work on the Mini. And you're probably going to try a bunch of, I know yesterday you did a review of some keyboard cases for the Mini. Oh, wait, that was for the Air. So forget about that. Yes. Are you going to try to get some accessories for the, some keyboards for the Mini?
I don't think so, just because I use a smart case, and I just, with that, there's really no
It'd be
point.
tough to
Yeah.
go back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question for you guys. We all three of us, I believe, had Airs before getting the new Mini.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a drop in performance from the A7 in there? I think they run maybe at a little bit different clock speeds, but it's definitely. I mean, what do you think of performance? I guess with the A7 and the new iPad Mini, you think it's still really fast?
Yeah. No difference.
Yeah, I think, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I should pull out the post from IDB we did last week. Apparently, after running some benchmarks, the iPad Mini came out underclocked compared to the iPad Air, even though it's all the same hardware. So some people were saying that, I think, what's his name, Jason Snell from Macworld was saying, oh yeah, I can tell the difference. You can tell the Mini is slower. I mean, really, like
Really?
yeah. I think I saw something like this. I was like, really? Come on, man. You notice like a 0.01 second in loading a page in Safari, So yeah, I don't think it's a noticeable I mean, I haven't noticed any difference. To me, the Mini is just as fast as the Air was. So yeah.
There may be just some like if you're doing export in iMovie, which I have not done yet on the Mini, you could probably notice a little, because that does use CPU. I mean, more than anything, exporting or rendering video and stuff like that. So perhaps he did that and noticed the difference.
Perhaps, yes. But in daily average basic usage of the Mini, I don't think we have noticed anything different, right?
Yeah.
I haven't.
No.
I haven't. In what I do
No.
every day, and in what people use the iPad mostly for every day, which is like web browsing and all that funny stuff, you won't notice a difference, really.
I've actually been impressed with how fast it was, and I think that has to do with I was way more, I spent a lot more time with my first gen iPad Mini, which I believe had the A5 in it, compared to the Air. I had more time, I played with the Air for about a week, but this is so significantly faster than the first generation iPad Mini. It's ridiculous. Yeah. I love how fast it is.
Yeah, I absolutely love the Mini. I mean, it's all about the size with the Mini.
Right.
It's just, there's something about it, and I don't need to do work on it. So the size really matters. Like the smaller, pretty much the better, to a certain point, of course. And the Retina display was really the one thing lacking from the previous Mini. And now we have not only the Retina display, but we also have the power of a full-size iPad in this tiny little thing. It's just wonderful. I mean, I absolutely love the iPad Mini with Retina display. Done. There, I said it.
Speaking of that Retina display, though, I guess there's been some reports from people over the last couple of days saying that there's a difference in color gamut or something like that. Have you guys noticed any problems with your displays on your new Minis?
Well,
No.
there's a couple of problems, I think, that have been reported.
Problems, yeah.
A couple of problems that have been reported. The first one, I believe, was a couple yesterday or a couple of days ago. Problem with image retention.
Right.
And I think the first person to mention this was Marco Arment, the guy who did Instapaper. And I try. He set up a test, and you can do the test if you go to his website. There's a link where you can do the test. And I did the test. I had the patience to go through the 10 minutes of testing, and I didn't see anything wrong on my iPad Mini, which doesn't mean there's nothing wrong. I guess I'm one of the lucky people who had like a good batch of iPad Minis, but apparently there's a few out there that were a bad batch, and which showed image retention on the sides of the screen. But again, like it seems to me this is a problem that you may only notice if you're really, really doing a test, like some extreme testing. And that's the kind of problem my mom might not even notice ever. So, yeah. And there is another report saying that the iPad Mini with Retina display has an inferior color gamut to iPad Air and other tablets out there.
Tablets.
Yeah. But again, I think if you don't know, I think if you don't know about it, I think 99.99% of people will not notice that. And the 0.01% noticing is the one who will have read a post on the internet, maybe on IGB, and they're gonna run some tests and figure out, oh yeah, I see it's not the same depth of colors and all that stuff.
I don't even think you have to necessarily run tests, though. I think there is a definite, like, if you've had an Air and you've had a Mini and you know anything about displays, anything about color and stuff like that, then there is a somewhat perceivable difference. I noticed it. I think
did?
the quality.
Really?
Yeah, I think the quality of the Air's display is a little better. I mean, for sure. Like, you don't even have to tell me that there's a color gamut difference. It's just something you can perceive just by looking at it.
See, that's completely different for me. Because when I saw that this problem pop up on Twitter, I kind of looked at my Mini display and I was like, I don't know what a color gamut is. I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking for here. The display looks great to me, so.
Oh, it still looks great, yeah.
And I think that's what Sebastian's saying, is that's how a lot of people are going to look at it,
right,
who aren't familiar with device displays and things like that, are just going to look at theirs and go, seems fine.
Yeah, unless you compare the two, unless you've unless you've had both and you really have paid attention to the display, you're not going to notice anything. And really, the difference is minimal, but there is a slight difference for sure.
Huh. Now, what I have noticed, and this was something I noticed in the Air and something we've talked about, is iOS 7 for the iPad is still very buggy to me.
Extremely.
It is still very buggy to me. I couldn't believe, okay, so here's a perfect example. I'm going through my, you double tap the home button and bring up the multitask, and some of the screenshots are missing, and some of the icons are up on top of the screen. And I was like, I can't be the only one having this problem. How could you ship something like this? And again, we've said that Apple kind of fell behind on the iPad, right? In previous podcasts, we've talked about this, where at one point they thought that Apple was going to ship the iPad version of iOS 7 a month or so later than the iPhone version, because the betas were just so far behind. But, I mean, have you noticed any problems, Sebastian?
Not major problems, but definitely small annoyances and things that make me think this would have never happened if Steve Jobs was still here. I'm kind of kidding, but
he said the line.
I'm joking, of course, but not really at the same time, because there's a bunch of things I'm like, this is like obvious. This is like obvious crap that you shipped on this particular event thing that I'm doing on my iPad Mini, for example, or iPhone 5S. And it seriously, there is sometimes I'm like, this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable when my iPhone 5S reboots out of nowhere, just crashes.
Mine's been doing that a lot, yeah.
Out of nowhere. When that happens once a month, it's okay. But when that happens every other day, it's not okay. I'm sorry, but this is not okay. But iOS 7.1 beta shipped today to developers, and I believe we kind of chit-chatted with Jeff about this really quick. We were mentioning there was nothing major in this release for a 0.1 release, you would expect a bunch of new features, maybe, or a few new features, something big coming with it. But there were a couple of things here and there, a couple of new additions to the settings and stuff, but no big feature. But I really believe this release 7.1, when it comes out to every user, probably in the next few weeks, I think it's going to bring a lot of stability enhancement and bug fixes, and I think it's really going to round up the edges, or it's going to make this thing like clean. And I mean, that's what I hope.
Tighten it up.
Yeah, that's what I hope, and that's what I believe is going to happen.
Well, I'm trying to think. iOS 6.1 last year was released right after Christmas. It feels like right out, And I think the big feature in that was there were some improvements to Siri, right? You could you could set up an order for movie tickets. You could say, and you could go through Fandango and things like that. So it wasn't huge, but other than that release, I think in the past, Apple has done some bigger features in its 0.1 releases and saved all the bug fixes and stuff for like 0.0.x releases.
Right.
So I agree that I mean, just looking at today's changelog, it's a mile long and there's all these bug fixes named, but I'm kind of holding out hope that maybe it's just withholding these bigger features. One, as it tightens everything up, and two, so it doesn't let anything maybe leak before they're ready to.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's what I told Jeff too before. At this point, I don't really care about getting new features. I just want my iPhone I just want my iOS device to work flawlessly. Because that's one of the reasons why I buy Apple, because it just works, right? And when it starts just not working, there is less compelling reasons there's still many reasons to buy an Apple product, but it's just, they don't need this right now. Apple is getting a lot of crap everywhere from everybody in the press, from the people in Wall Street, from the users, from the other guys who don't like Apple, so they just take it down. So they just don't need more bad press. And this is something that is, they deserve this bad press for this. They don't need this right now. And I believe they understand this, and I'm sure they do actually, and I believe iOS 7.1 will fix all that. Hopefully, will fix all that stuff.
Yeah, you're right. I was just trying to remember a time when I had iOS 6 or iOS 5 or anything that my device actually restarted itself on its own, and I can't think of one. You know what I mean? So it's tough. You're right. My iPhone 5S restarts itself at least once a day.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's ridiculous. You're exactly right. So here's hoping that so I hope that iOS 7.1 fixes this, but I'm also fingers crossed that they slip in a little quick reply for iMessage.
Yeah.
That actually,
I'm not sure about
Sebastian thought it would be, you thought it'd be funny to play a little joke on Twitter.
I do this every time. There's a new software release. I just think it's funny. Troll people for a minute, and it works like every time. Like you get 100 replies saying, "Oh man, you really got me," or "Oh, you scared me. I really believed it." Maybe one day.
That's a highly anticipated, highly requested feature. Because, I use it all the time now on the Mac. Mac OS X Mavericks, the latest version of Apple's desktop software, includes quick reply for, I believe, iMessage and maybe even email. And that would just be huge. It's a highly requested feature for iOS. It would enable you to be able to essentially not have to unlock your device to reply, to quickly reply to somebody that sends you a message or something like that.
Right.
Or not have to leave your current app. Also,
exactly. Yeah, you could just pull a keyboard down out of the notification. Yeah, that would be huge.
That would happen eventually.
Yeah. So is that it? I think that's it for iOS 7.1 beta, right? There wasn't any.
No, there was a couple of features here and there. There's a new HDR auto feature in the camera app.
New Yahoo logo.
A new Yahoo logo. In the settings app, you have now the option to upload burst photos or the burst photos to PhotoStream or not. You can.
I thought the dark keyboard was cool.
Yeah, you can use dark keyboard. You can set this as always on. Instead of having like these two keyboards, depending on the background, you can have like a lighter or darker keyboard. So you can choose to have a darker keyboard all the time, which I guess is a nice option. You can choose to darken colors. There's new increased contrast option as well. I mean, there's new feature somewhere in there. What else do we have? You can. That's about it.
I saw there was new dialogue that warns you, I think now.
Yeah.
Before you shut down your iPhone 5S, that your Touch ID, you can't just use a Touch ID. When it comes back, you'll have to have your password.
Yeah, that's actually when you restart it the first time when it first boots up, when your first screen shows up, it says Touch ID.
Yeah.
Touch ID requires your passcode when iPhone restarts, and before it was saying pretty much the same thing, but in a different way. So I mean, there's nothing really groundbreaking here. Nothing to call home about.
I thought that new Yahoo logo was pretty. It was pretty nice.
Yeah, it fits just right in. We should do a tutorial on how to use the new Yahoo, how to see the new Yahoo logo on iOS 7.1 beta.
I think a couple other blogs already did.
Where to find the new Yahoo logo? In like five bullet points, 5 steps.
5 steps, like super detailed.
First, make sure your device is on.
I dare any of you to write 1,000 words on how to access the new Yahoo logo on iOS 7.1 beta.
Oh man!
And we had to change our name to something. Never mind. I'm not going to start a war.
That's fine. I've got some good news for myself. I finally got my gold iPhone. I got it. When did I get it? Last Wednesday. Thank you for the clapping. I recognize Cody's clapping here. His legendary clapping.
He's got great claps. Yeah. You know him.
So I got my gold iPhone, and I want to share this trick with. I never wrote about it on IDB, but I think it's worth sharing because I think a lot of people are in my situation every year, and a lot of people probably don't know about that. So when I bought my iPhone 5S, I was number 2 in line at the AT&T store on launch day. The AT&T store I was at, like probably most of the stores in the country, only had the space gray option. So I wasn't sure which one I wanted, but since I had no option but the space gray one, I got the space gray one. Came home that day. Actually, I went to the Apple store and I checked out the gold model, and I was like, you know what? I don't particularly like it, but the gold iPhone 5S is the first iPhone of its kind to be in gold, to come in a gold color. It's a very iconic device. It's going to be really like the landmark device, I think, for iPhone 5S. So I was like, I want this one. I don't want a space gray. So what I did, I went to AT&T 2 days after purchasing my iPhone 5S, and I told them I wanted a gold one, and they said, well, it's going to take a month for you to get it. And I said, fine. And I had done this before. I had done this last year and maybe even the year before, but I had definitely done this last year, so I knew the trick. The trick is, when you buy a device from AT&T, you only have 14 days to return it. So I only had 14 days to return my first iPhone 5S. But the guy told me it's going to take over a month or over a month to get your gold iPhone. So I would have been over my 14-day period here. But the trick is that if you order your iPhone within the 14 days, then it is considered as being within the 14 days, so you can return your iPhone even if it takes 2 months to receive the other one. So I got my gray one the first day, and I ordered the gold one 2 days later, and I actually received it last week. So it was like a month and a half after I actually ordered it in store. So when I worked at the AT&T store, I explained my situation. I said, hey, I know you got my gold iPhone. I got an email from FedEx or UPS. You have it here. I'm here to return this one and pick up my gold one. And the guy was an employee, just an employee. And he looked on his iPad and he's like, well, actually, you can't return it because it's been more than 14 days. It's been like a month and a half. And I told him, I explained to him his job. I said, well, actually, like if I ordered it within the 14 days, so technically I can return this one. And he called a manager who came over and she explained to him that, yes, because I had ordered within the 14 days, I was able to return my space gray and get the gold iPhone. So I think that's a really, really neat trick, especially on launch days when you can't necessarily have the device you want, and it might take some time to get the device you want. You can, do that. But obviously you want to talk to a manager about this because not every employee knows it. And if I hadn't insisted,
Right.
the guy might have just told me, no, you can't. And, goodbye, go home. Thank you.
So explain some of the caveats or one of the caveats to this.
None. Well, one of the caveats, the only one I can think of, is you have to pay AT&T a $35 restocking fee for the phone you return.
Right. And you also have to pay for the phone you want up front, right?
Oh, yeah. So I paid for the phone I wanted up front. When I
Full retail, right?
was it full retail, this one? Yes, this one was full retail. Was it? No, because I was eligible. My wife wasn't, so we are like off by 1 year. So no, this one I paid how do you call this, the
Upgrade fee
no,
or the subsidized
price. So I paid $400. I get the 64 gigs. I paid the subsidized price for this for $400 plus taxes. Let's say $5. I'm gonna keep it like $400. So I paid $400 the day I bought it in store. And then when I ordered from AT&T the gold one, I gave them my credit card. They slid it, and I wasn't charged until it shipped. So it shipped a week before I received it, basically. I was charged for it 2 weeks ago, and I got the phone last week. So if you're tight on cash or if you don't have a credit card, that might be a problem. Yes, obviously, because, for a short period of time, you're going to be charged for 2 iPhones. But once I returned my gray iPhone in store, they refunded my credit card for the full price of the phone minus the $35 upgrade fee, restocking fee.
I can't believe they let you use basically their equipment on loan almost.
Yeah.
The space gray iPhone for over a month. That's crazy to me. And then said, okay, you can still return it. It makes sense because it's not the customer's fault that you have
absolutely
that they don't have the inventory on hand,
right,
to meet your replacement request. So, it kind of makes sense, and I would recommend that if anybody tries this, you make sure you note the person's name who you spoke with that's guaranteeing you to allow you to, because like you said, you ran into a problem where if there hadn't been a manager on hand.
Yeah. And when I did this last year was the first time I did this because I bought the black iPhone 5 last year, and turned out I wanted the white silver one. So every day for like almost 2 weeks, I would go to my AT&T store and say, do you have the white iPhone 5? No. I'll come back tomorrow. I came back the next day. And then like a week later, the manager, a cool little guy, and I still see him all the time when I try to talk to him because he's the manager and he knows what he's talking about. One day it's like, dude, you've been coming here every day. Like, don't you know you can actually order it, and then when we receive it, we'll let you know and you can exchange it. I'm like, I've been coming here for a week or 10 days and no one told me about this. It's like, well, I guess they don't really know about that. So that's maybe something they don't make really. They don't really advertise. They probably don't want people to really know it and just get devices on loan for a month and a half, like I did with the space gray iPhone 5s. but it does work. I'm not sure if it works at every other carrier. I'm not sure if you go to Verizon or Sprint or T-Mobile. I don't know how that works, but that definitely works at AT&T. And again, you definitely want to talk to your manager because they're the one who will know about this, at least in my experience. And other employees on the floor they had no clue about this actually. So
Yeah. And it may even be a per store thing, I would warn. It may be like a per store policy because while it might be AT&T's policy, it may not be one that they force all of their stores to abide by. Does that make sense? Maybe a manager at another store also doesn't know about this and just runs with the past 14 days no go. So again, that's why we say definitely make sure you talk to somebody who gives you the thumbs up first.
Possibly, yes, but yet you definitely want to talk to someone in the know, like a boss, basically.
So what do you think? You love it? Are you glad you went through all that?
Yeah, I mean, going through all that, like you said, wasn't, I didn't have to fight for it. I just had to wait for it, so that wasn't really bad. But yeah, it's a good-looking phone. It's. I don't think it's a very manly phone, but like I said, it's a very iconic model. I think it's the first gold iPhone, and that's what makes it so special to me. So that's why I really wanted. But yeah, it looks good. Yeah, it looks good. Like I've noticed, it looks different depending on the light. Much more so than the other models.
Silver sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes it looks silver. Sometimes it looks brown. So sometimes it looks kind of pinkish. So it has many different colors. But yeah, I like it. I mean, I definitely do not regret exchanging it. I'm really happy about the overall purchase and the decision. Yeah.
I want to especially talk about this is the rumor going around that Apple purchased PrimeSense.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, huh?
It's super interesting. I mean, honestly, to me, this is probably one of the bigger acquisition rumors we've heard for Apple since Authentic. Maybe before that. Authentic, they're the ones who made the Touch ID chips, right? They were this big fingerprint sensor company, and then Apple bought them, and then, this year we get the iPhone 5S with the Touch ID. So that was huge. But this, and for people who don't know who PrimeSense is, it's this Israeli-based company that does things with like 3D, scanners, sensors. They were actually the company behind the technology and everything that went into Microsoft's first generation Kinect, that tracks the motion and lets you play these motion-based games. Microsoft makes its own, I think, in the brand new Xbox that's coming out, the Xbox One. But in the first generation, this was all PrimeSense. And yeah, I mean, it's huge because we've been hearing rumors for a while now that Apple was or is working on some sort of TV device that actually uses Kinect-like motion. And what I think and what I kind of postulated on Twitter the other day was that perhaps Apple was trying to build this on its own and it wasn't getting the results it wanted. So it just went straight to the source and said, you know what? We need you and your technology. Come on in.
Yeah, and for $250 million, really, it's pocket change for Apple. So, I mean, that's definitely really a smart decision. They really streamline the process here. They have the original people, behind the original product. And they don't have to fight for licenses, and then they don't have to fight later on for patent wars and all that stuff, because they're probably going to acquire a sizable portfolio of patents. I would assume for probably not thousands and thousands of patents, but probably a few very key patents in this domain. I would hope so anyway. So that's definitely. I mean, then you can think about the possibilities. That's what I was kind of thinking about. That's really what's like you, Cody, excites me the most in this rumor. And I believe I think All Things Digital said yesterday that the deal is not made, but it's more than rumors at this point. They're really talking about it, and they're finishing up the deal, and it's just a matter of figuring out who's going to get paid first in this deal. So is the investors going to pay? What investors of PrimeSense are going to get paid first? So it's just come down to money at this point, and it's pretty much a done deal.
Right.
But yeah, it's pretty exciting to to think about what we might be able to do with that, not only on in your living room with the Apple TV, but also what you might be able to do with your iPad maybe or your iPhone. You might be able to do some new gestures. I mean, that opens up brand new sets of gestures that you could perform without even touching the screen. You know, like you could have like these gestures you find on, I believe, the Galaxy S4, where you can like turn the pages, you know, without touching the phone, or you can reply to a phone call without actually touching the phone, just performing a few gestures above the screen, which I think are really, really cool ideas, by the way. So props to Samsung and for that. But
I agree there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty exciting. And of course, in the living room with the Apple TV, you know, if you could just basically do gestures like as if you were touching the screen of your TV screen, but sitting on your couch, you know, and you could just, I don't know, I'm performing this as I'm talking in the microphone. I'm trying to replicate this on my iMac right now, you know. I'd be like, maybe just close this and then you can like swipe through the channels and all that stuff. I mean, that opens up an array of new possibilities, I think, for the living room and for your mobile device and probably for your Mac as well.
It kind of reminds me of if you've ever seen the movies Minority Report or Iron Man, like the way that Tony Stark works in his basement,
right?
Where he just kind of draws and he touches in the air and he's moving things from screen to screen just by flicking his wrist. And that's what I think of when I see this. And you're right, it could go way past, you know, what I initially thought is cool. Maybe Apple's thinking about Kinect-like motions to control your TV. Maybe they're thinking about gaming and opening up this motion-based API for developers and all those possibilities. But Sebastian, you're right. It would be really cool if on your desktop, you know, you wouldn't have to actually be touching the screen, or it would be a completely different way to input information or to navigate. You're just drawing in the air, and I think that would be really cool. I also like you said, the Samsung. I've always thought that was kind of an interesting feature. You know, a lot of people dogged on it, the S4 in general, just for having a lot of gimmicky stuff. But how many times have your hands been covered in maybe food particles or just dirty from maybe you were out doing yard work? And it would be really cool to be able to maybe get some quick information or make phone calls or things like that by swiping your hand over the device and not actually have to touch your screen, get it dirty, things like that. So, I mean, obviously any speculation, we speculate all the time, right? We always talk about rumors, Apple's rumored to do this and do this. But when you talk about Apple just bought Hopstop, a map company that's going to improve its transit, that's not near as exciting as Apple just bought the company that made the original Kinect.
Yeah.
What are they going to do with it? You know, what are they planning for this?
Absolutely.
So,
and you know, like
that's why I get so excited. And
we think. I mean, we just throw a bunch of thoughts out there about what could be done, and that might not be done, you know, by Apple this year or next year. But I mean, this is definitely the future. Like having a screen in front of you and not having to touch the screen physically and just perform gestures in front of it. I mean, that's definitely the future here. So It's not really a matter of dreaming it up. It's just a matter of when that's going to happen and who's going to make it happen. And Samsung has started, as we mentioned, with the S4. I mean, but that's just the beginning here. And I mean, I'm extremely excited about that. And maybe they can implement this, you know, as quickly as they implemented the technology in Authentech for Touch ID, which would mean that maybe in a year from now, we might be able to have new gestures on the iPhone. Who knows? And one gesture I really want is one where I don't need the home button anymore. One where I could just like do something to close the screen I'm on. Just as if I push the home button, but without touching the home button. And that would be good, because most of the time touching the home button is a pain in the butt to me. Not a pain, but it creates friction in my experience. It's just it moves my finger. My thumb usually is towards the middle of the screen, you know, hovering over the middle of the screen, somewhere over there. And then when I need to close my application, I need to bring my thumb all the way down to my home button and tap on it. And of course, this is ridiculous. This is like total first world problem. I mean, that's the definition of a first world problem when you're complaining about having to to tap the home button on your iPhone 5S. But if I could avoid doing this, if I could just like have my thumb in the over the screen and just flick it up like this, and maybe the camera would notice that and figure out that what I want to do is close the application, that would just be awesome.
Well, imagine the screen was bigger too. Imagine if the iPhone were to get bigger in future generations, how much more of a pain it would be to get down to that home button.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
yep.
Jeff, you've been pretty quiet. Does any of this excite you, or are you just...
Are we waking you up, Jeff?
Trying to decide if
are
you
you
wanna...
still here, Jeff?
Are you trying to decide if you want to keep the Retina Mini or not?
I'm taking it back actually right now.
You hear Jeff's car starting.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it does kind of interest me, but not really. I mean, it's just one of those things that I'll wait to see what they do to get excited about it. The Touch ID was way more exciting for me, at least on a personal basis. I just don't like Connect. I never saw really the point of that. I never had a desire to have it at all. This whole Samsung thing, I understand what Sebastian's saying about like if your hands are dirty or something like that. That would be nice. And yes, the home button does create friction, so it would be nice to see that technology eventually in a new iOS device. But it's just hard for me to get up for that. I don't know.
So Jeff's going through a minimalist stage right now. He's definitely all about the least amount of flair. I can see why it doesn't interest you.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. That's just hard for me to get excited about rumors. I mean, I know this isn't a rumor so as much as a done deal, but I'll just wait to see what they announce.
Well, for me, you have to wonder, okay, if it is more than rumor, and if they are close to reaching a deal, what are their plans? And so for me, it's fun to speculate on that.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah. But you're right. It's hard to even imagine or fathom, because some of the stuff we've been talking about, it may be the future, but to a lot of people, that's Star Wars. That's that's Iron Man. That's superhero. So it has, it's tough to even guess what they might have planned for.
Well, I think, given what PrimeSense does and what their core business is, I think that it goes without saying that if Apple is purchasing them, then yes, we will see some kind of, interactive gesture-based control on some device that they create.
Right. Yeah. More than maybe even the living room.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, to go back to speculating, when we talk about having a Mac with a touch screen, people are like, oh, not going to happen. Your screen is going to be all greasy and dirty and stuff. That's this technology, let's call it the PrimeSense technology. The PrimeSense technology could totally alleviate that. It could really get rid of this problem of having to touch your screen, and your screen is getting all dirty and stuff. And because you wouldn't have to touch your screen anymore. You could just do everything as if you were touching the screen, but you're actually not touching it. I think that's just wonderful. I think that's very exciting. I just want it right now.
Right.
Seriously, I want it right now. I'm like playing with my iMac right now. It feels boring. I want to be able to scroll through my page without touching the screen.
That would be pretty incredible. Like, I'm just have my phone laying on my desk right now, and I'm just simulating what that would be like. And yeah, you're right. If they could get the cameras that focused on the proximity of your fingers and the exact location, that would be pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
If you could control your iPhone just completely devoid of actually touching the screen.
Yeah, I think we're just a few years, or maybe just a year away from that, or we're just years away from that, and that's inevitable. That's the future, and that's not like some crazy future idea like teleportation. That's something that's going to happen very, very soon. So I want it. I'm going to go to the Apple Store right now and get in line for whenever that comes out. I'll be there.
Save me a spot. All right, guys. Well, I think that pretty much covers all the topics for today. Do you guys have anything else you want to bring up?
I was just going to mention, for people who missed it last night, maybe didn't see us tweet this out, I guess the podcast has been doing pretty good in iTunes, right? At some point we were in the top 10 for technology podcasts, and I think we were even mentioned in Apple's new and noteworthy section. So thanks, guys, for tuning in, because it's obviously getting us somewhere.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up, Connie. I totally forgot about that. We've had a bunch of, I kind of monitor this on a regular basis, the ratings we get on iTunes, because it's very indicative of how we do. And yesterday, I checked, there was, I think, 25 ratings. 24 of them were 5 stars, and one of them was a 4-star rating. And I read all the comments of people who actually leave reviews. So I read all of them, and one stood out was actually the one that left 4 stars, and said it was a great podcast and everything. And the guy actually mentioned one of my concerns. I don't know if you remember last week, I mentioned something that always kind of bothers me, is the fact that English is not my native language, even though I've been living here in the US for 10 years. I obviously still speak with a very thick French accent. So I mentioned this in the last episode, and the guy said something, I can't remember his name. He mentioned that it doesn't matter to him when someone speaks a different language or speaks with an accent, as long as he has a good grasp of the language he's speaking. So I thought that was very nice. That was, I guess, a way to say, hey, don't worry, Sebastian, you speak pretty good English, and that doesn't bother me at all. So that made me feel good, even though he left only a 4-star review. That was a very, I think, good comment. I mean, that made me feel good. And all the other comments are very good. They're pretty much saying we're doing a great job and everybody's excited. So if you think we're doing a great job, and if you have a couple minutes, maybe even less than that, maybe a few seconds, you can go to the podcast app on your iPhone or your iPad, or you can go directly to iTunes in the podcast section, look for us, and if you can rate us and leave a little review, that's always nice. That makes us feel good, and that encourages us to do even more, which we'll do anyway. But positive reviews are always nice.
Plus, we love it when, if you have comments or feedback or have suggestions, contact us on Twitter. We're always on Twitter, and that'll be in the show notes, right, Jeff?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we're pretty available, huh? I think.
Yeah. A little too available. Well, I spend a little too much time on Twitter.
Yeah, no, but I don't spend really, really much time on Twitter, but I do make a point to answer every question that is asked to me personally. And I also do my best to answer every question that is asked to the IGB account. If it's a question saying when is something weird coming that I don't know, I just don't reply. But in most cases, I will reply to every question, especially if it's sent to me personally. I will definitely answer every question.
Wow, that's pretty nice. I need to do a better job of that.
Yeah, well, I don't receive tons of questions. There was a time when I was more involved in the day-to-day activity on IDB, and by activity I mean I'm involved in the day-to-day activity on IDB. You don't see it, but I am. But when publishing more posts on IDB, I was receiving much more questions and comments and all that stuff on Twitter. Now it seems like people have kind of forgotten about me. They're like, who's this guy? Who's this Sebastian? How do you pronounce his name anyway? So yeah, I get much less questions. But again, I try to answer all of them. I do actually answer all of them.
Nice.
All right. That wraps it up for episode number 3 of Let's Talk iOS with my good friends and longtime editors of iDownload blog, Cody Lee and Jeff Benjamin. All right, guys. I gotta go.
Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.